This is the Ask Faleskini podcast, where the modern economy is discussed from a skeptic's perspective. Mr. Faleskini helps you distinguish what is sustainable in our economy and what isn't. Not everything that glitters is gold, and not all mud is dirty. The podcaster Mr. Faleskini provides no-nonsense advice. He had it all, lost it all, went bankrupt multiple times, and is now attempting to come back from zero with sustainable growth. There are numerous coaches and preachers on the internet that preach about positive thinking and how life is all roses if you just care to see it that way. Well, Mr. Faleskini is definitely not one of them. We recommend you ask Faleskini to keep it real. He discusses the darker side of the current economic reality, the side that's more important for your personal and business finance. His first intention is to help you keep what you already have. Not to be a complete party pooper, Mr. Faleskini will also hint at the earning opportunities in the economy today. In order to please the almighty algorithm, please like, share, and subscribe. And now it's time to start taking notes. The mic goes to the podcaster, the one and only Mr. Faleskini.
Welcome to the Ask Faleskini podcast with a guest. I'm proud to present Brad Smotherman. Brad is a top house flipper, and he helps other newer investors to build sustainable real estate investment companies. Brad, welcome to the Ask Faleskini podcast. Please tell us more about yourself. What is your story?
Sure, man. First, Peter, appreciate you having me. It's always great to be with amazing people. So my name's Brad Smotherman. I'm historically from Nashville, Tennessee. Real estate is all I know. I jokingly say that I know almost everything about almost nothing when it comes to real estate because what we do is very niche. I got involved in real estate pretty early on. And I guess to go a little bit deeper into the story, my 8th grade math teacher was a real estate agent. And this was a teacher that would still paddle you. You know, if you didn't have your homework, he would take you out in the hallway and whack. You would hear it all through the hallway. And everybody was terrified of this guy. We thought he was Satan incarnate. And, then my grandfather passed away. I was raised by my grandparents. My grandfather passed away December of that year, so halfway through the school year. And he took me outside. He said, "Brad, out in the hallway." First day back after the funeral. And I thought, well, here we go. And he got down on one knee and kind of looked up at me and said, "Son, I heard your papa passed away. I just wanted to make sure that you're okay." And after that, me and him became very close. He really kind of stepped into more of a father figure role for me. And so at the end of that year, he said, "Guys, I'm quitting teaching. This is my last year. I've been doing this for 25 years. I have a master's degree, but I'm making more money selling real estate part-time on the weekends than I am full-time teaching." And I thought, how is that possible? This guy is a professional, 25 years experience. How is this possible? And that was really my first, from a Robert Kiyosaki perspective, rich dad, poor dad moment, because I saw for the first time the distinction. And so I kept up with him through high school, and I would see Mr. Patterson at ball games and different things. And then one day when I was 17, I woke up and said, I'm going to get my real estate license and sell real estate through college. And I called him. He remembered me. And he was my first mentor in real estate. And so I sold real estate through college. All of that was really, really good until the collapse of '08. That was a real estate depression in the United States. And so in 2010, I retired my real estate license to become an investor, and start doing what I do now, even though I'd never done an investment deal. So for me, it was about commitment. I burned the ships, burned the boats, burned the bridges, made sure that I didn't have a backup plan. I had to make it work as an investor. And so fast forward to today, depending on the month, we have oftentimes bought $1 million in equity in 30 days. And we buy and sell houses mostly across the Southeast, but I think we've done deals in 39 states, something like that.
That is an amazing story. And I really like your rich dad, poor dad theme with Robert Kiyosaki, because I think we all read the book and it's just amazing. And you said that 2008 was apocalyptic year for the property, and that only 2 years later you become investor. So What did you learn from the depression in 2008, and how did it help you moving forward from 2010 on?
Yes, well, It's interesting that that's a really good question and one that I've thought about a lot because had I been 5 years older, I would have been an investor and dealt the same bad hand of cards that everybody else was dealt. But I was early in my career. So I got to see people that I was working for or people that I've become friends with and what they dealt with without me personally having to deal with it. And the first thing that I would submit to your audience is to stay away from banks. The builder developer that I worked for during college, he ended up going bankrupt because the bank called a loan, meaning that they're calling the entire amount due they wanted to pay off within 30 days on a development loan that he had never been late on. So he'd made the payments. He was struggling because everybody was struggling in 2009, especially new construction that was higher end. But the bank said, "Oh, sorry, 30 days, we need to pay off." And he couldn't do it. And there was no refinancing that debt during that time. So it bankrupted him. And this was a good man, a hard worker who'd always, tried to do the quote unquote right thing, not get over leveraged, pay off debt as soon as you can. And I think because he had tried to pay that loan down significantly and he had done that, that they called his loan first because, the loan to value was probably a good position for the bank to take over if they had to foreclose, and they did. And so the first thing I would say is really make sure to stay away from banks. Secondly, and this is just general business, a good friend of mine, Coach Michael Burt, said to me the other day, he said, Brad, spring and summer always, winter is always coming and winter wants to know what you did all spring and summer. And I thought that's exactly correct. So having cash reserves, having good deals that have equity position on the front end, and it's really about conservatism. That's not a political statement, but it's really about being financially conservative. So a lot of people think that real estate investors are just blow and go investors. And I think that some people could be that. But I think as long as we're conservative, we have good inventory in the company, we don't get over leveraged, then we're going to have success. And that really is independent of market cycles.
Okay. So basically what you're trying to imply is that there's always business to be made in property, especially if you go more conservative. Would you agree that in real estate, money is made when you purchase it?
Absolutely. Yeah. Everybody's concerned about a market, but what they don't realize is that in my world, we're always in two markets. There's a market to buy real estate and a market to sell real estate. And they're inversely related, meaning it's either good to buy or good to sell. And so I don't really care what the market is at. I care where it's going. Okay. So I have a plan for a bad market. I have a plan for a good market. And as we transition, that's where the risk is. So if we're going from a good seller's market to a bad buyer's market, then, it's that transition that has the risk, right? The risk that you have going from a seller's market to a buyer's market is you're holding too much inventory. And the risk that you have in going from a buyer's market to a seller's market is you don't hold enough because that's an appreciating market. So you just have to be careful as markets transition and markets change. But I don't really care what the market does.
Okay, that is really nice because you make money even if market goes down. It's just important that you buy lower than you sell. And then I think that's quite straightforward philosophy. And I would like to ask you about, you said that you are conservatively leveraged and that you don't do it with the banks. How do you do it then? Can you disclose that?
For sure. Absolutely. So what we do, and I hesitate to go into deep detail just because it's going to create confusion, but I can go at it from more of a macro perspective.
Yes.
The first thing is that we have to have a motivated seller. We have to have someone that has already identified that they have to get rid of a piece of property. We don't buy from the banks. We don't buy from real estate agents. We don't buy at auctions. All of that is picked over. So we have to be direct to seller. So that's the first thing. Secondly, whenever we're structuring a deal, if we're looking at the deal, we want to keep our cash and credit on the sidelines as often as we can. Okay. So we deal in what we call creative finance. Okay. So we're not borrowing money from banks. I rarely, although sometimes, borrow money from private individuals to come in on transactions. So that's one way to do it. But a lot of what we do has built-in financing. So you think about it like this. I had a situation not long ago where there was a lady that was pre-foreclosure. She was in a divorce. She had squatters in the house, so she was a tired landlord, and she just had a heart attack. Okay, so she had four of my big five motivators, what we call the big five motivators. So this was a hyper motivated person. She did not want this property. It was behind on payments. She didn't have control over the property. She didn't have time, and she had to focus on her health. And so what we did in that scenario is she had a mortgage that had a 3% interest rate. We just took over payments on that existing loan. Okay, continued to make the payments on it. We're not assuming the loan. We're buying it called, and this is a lower level deal structure, but called subject to. So we're taking the title of the property subject to that existing lien, and we continue to make the payments on the property. And then it had an equity position on top of that. So I can't remember the exact numbers. I think she owed around 200. It was worth 275. I think we gave her $5,000 cash to walk away with. And so here we are with $5,000. We're able to capture a $75,000 equity position. Okay, so that's a pretty safe situation where we don't personally owe the debt. And we're in a situation where we're not outlaying a bunch of cash and we have good upside. So, just investing 101, minimize the downside, maximize the upside, and let the markets roll.
I will now start digging into the secrets. You mentioned big five motivators. Can you disclose these big five?
For sure. So the first is pre-foreclosure, meaning that these people are behind on payments. The bank is there's risk of the bank taking back the property. Number two is divorce. Half of you know more about divorce than I do because I've never been through one. So divorce. Number three, inheritance. So the people have inherited something that they don't want. Number four, tired landlords. So people that own rental property but have squatters or potentially they're just done with the property. They're older. And then number five is health and safety. And I say safety because we buy about a dozen houses a year from people that are in abuse situations. So either elder abuse or spousal abuse. And so getting people out of those situations. So health and safety is the last one. And these situations create the life circumstance that dictate that people have to get rid of property. Okay, so it's not like you're reaching out to people, cold calling or direct mail, asking someone to sell you something. These people are asking you to buy something. And there's a big difference in the two.
Okay, so I have another question. I used to have property in 6 states at simultaneous, and you said that you work in the 31 state. How does that work? How can you control such a large territory?
Yeah. Well, number one, the farther away the property is, the less control you have. So you have to mitigate that risk by buying at a deeper discount. Okay. So like the first thing is buying a good property. And the thing is, man, like I have people that I've trained that do this like multi-state. I have a handful of people that do this from overseas. I have people in Costa Rica, South Africa, Canada, Mexico that are buying U.S. real estate with this type of a system. But it starts with a really conservative purchase, okay? Because there's no way to control everything. Secondly, we want to stay away from rehab as much as we can, okay? So dealing with contractors, like doing a gut down rehab 6 states away is a total disaster. What makes a lot more sense is to buy the house and then sell it as is because you have a good position in it just as is. So maybe you clean it out, something like that, but we're not doing a rehab. Or potentially what we like to do is sell it with owner finance. Okay, so we sell it with owner financing. We take back the note just like a bank would. And so instead of owing the debt, you own the debt. And so you're receiving monthly payments on the property, similar to a rental, but then you don't have vacancy and repair. Okay, so that's another way to do it. But it's all about staying out of the complexity of rehabs 4 or 5 states over. And there's exceptions to the rule, but that's the general rule. Buying very, very well at the beginning, and then have exit strategies that, depending on the market, are going to work. So like as an example, owner financing works better during bad times because banks tighten their lending perimeters. So when I say like, I don't really care what the market's doing, if we go to a tough 2010, 2012 market, back what it was 12, 14 years ago, then I'm just going to buy everything and then sell it owner finance, which is what I did. Every single deal I did was that from 2010 to 2014. So that's how we can do things remotely, is to be conservative, stay away from construction, and then have multiple exits.
Hey, that is really something. So How do you teach people how to invest? You disclosed many strategies and tactics that you're using. But let's say that one of our listeners from the US would like to start investing in the property, and they're a bit scared because of the down market and all the news about what cannot be sold. The Florida
Yeah.
property market is falling apart. All this, where should they start? How should they get in contact with you? What's the first step that they should do?
Well, it's a funny thing, man, because I've seen people for the past 10 years talk about the next market crash, and they're waiting. They're waiting for the next market crash, and then they're going to jump into real estate. But, let's say it happens. Here's what they're going to say. It's like, oh, things are pretty bad right now. I really need to wait for a little while until things get better. And so, there's always going to be the naysayers that say, oh, the next market crash is here, the next Armageddon is here. And just like, Tony Soprano said, a broken clock is right twice a day. That being said, if somebody wants to do real estate, whether it's with me or with anybody else or whatever that looks like, I think it first depends on where you are. Okay, so really identifying where you are. What do you have more of? Do you have more time or money? And then checking the commitment in terms of the goal. So everything that I do with someone is customized. So if somebody comes to me for training, mentorship, it's like, okay, where are we? Where are we hoping to go? What are the challenges that are keeping us from getting there? And then coming up with a strategy of exactly what to do next steps to mitigate those challenges. But it starts with where you are and where you want to go. And a lot of people, man, I mean, I would say right now, and this is a gut check for the listeners, how many of you guys remember what your goals were at the beginning of the year? Very few people could automatically say, this is what I wanted. And even fewer could say, well, this is where I am in context of that goal, right? And so having crystal clarity, I think, is one of the most important things when it comes to this. And then from there, the strategy is just learning strategy. There's no such thing as a born real estate investor. There's no such thing as a born anything, right? Investors are created, right? And so it's just learning the techniques, the strategies, and then going and implementing so that you can get the feedback loop and really start to build a business from there. But I'm a true believer that anybody can do this. I have, all the way from like international people in the US, title attorneys, engineers, doctors, all the way to homeschool moms of 5 or 7, single dads, people that are driving Uber on the weekends to make the business work. And all of these people have been successful. Okay. Now, to go into it, just so it doesn't sound like it's all rainbows and sunshine, because I don't believe in that. The business is challenging. You are going to run into challenges, and when you run into a challenge, you need to go and get help. Okay. And that's part of what we try to do for people. So that's kind of the long and short of it, man. Figure out where you are, what you want, come up with a plan and implementation.
Thank you. That's amazing. So let me just repeat a couple of the key elements. There's always room or there's always the right time to start your property investment. If you do it right, it does not require market to be booming. You can make money in a down market. There's never right time to go in. There's always something going to be that it's not perfect to get. But if you start, you will start gaining experiencing, and you will slowly improve and get a mentor. Is there anything else you would like our listeners to take from this interview? Do you have any tips or trick of the trade that you can share?
For sure. So number one, the business is a marketing and sales business with a real estate arm. A lot of people focus on the real estate, the property. It's much more about the problem that can be solved. So going back to the big 5 motivators, that's the business. Okay. It's not whether it's a 3-bedroom or a 2-bedroom. I've often, man, become dumbfounded talking to some investors that are really, really rigid in how they invest. And one guy said, Brad, I don't buy 2-bedroom houses. I said, well, what if the house was worth $300,000 and you could buy it for $1,000? Would you do that? And he said, well, that's different. I said, well, it is different, but maybe we shouldn't have the hard, fast rule of always and never. Right. But it's a marketing business and it's a fun business. It's a challenging business, but it's a very gratifying business. And it's definitely not get rich quick. But I do think that a lot of people can gain wealth or store their wealth in real estate. And I feel like a good chunk of people that have over $10 million net worth have a good, significant portion in real estate. So I think it's a good place to be long term. But I do think it's one of the few places where people can actually go from startup through struggle to success and actually get to 5 to 10 million net worth within a reasonable time frame, as opposed to continuing to work the job. So yeah, we're happy. We're excited about what we're seeing in the market, and we'll let it play out.
Thank you very much. Thank you for all your insights. Thank you for your optimistic look at the situation, and thank you for encouraging us to start. And thank you for being my guest tonight.
Thank you, Peter. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Mr. Faleskini, for this outstanding podcast. And thank you for listening to the Ask Faleskini podcast until the end. Mr. Faleskini would love to hear your feedback in the comments. And don't forget, if you want to know, ask Faleskini or listen to the Ask Faleskini podcast. In order to please the almighty algorithm, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.